Longpo, as we are waiting for questions to come through, someone has asked me before, the calendar of the Buddhist calendar and the lunar calendar, they kind of like, you know, are plus one day minus 1 day apart. So the lunar calendar for us, the 15th is actually on Tuesday. Okay, whereas Magha Puja is on Wednesday. Is there a reason why there is a difference?
Conventional reality is like that. Whoever decides something and gets in there, then they make their tradition, set it up, take their measurements and agree on it, and that's that. And then some other group will set up their calendar and take their measurements and get their tradition going, and it might be slightly out. I don't think it really matters, does it? As long as we don't argue about it too much, we can make use of these different traditions. So we have the Thai lunar Buddhist calendar is always 1 day out from the Chinese one. So sometimes you get 2 days. Why not? So we get Magha Puja, say 2 days of Magha Puja. All the better. Do more practice, commit to the practice more, brings out more faith, do more good things, do more dana, keep the precepts even better, listen to the Dhamma, understand the Dhamma better, do more meditation. Why not? So it's just human behavior is like this. There's always slight differences and things, you know, basically it's the same thing that they're celebrating, but one is on the Tuesday, one on the Wednesday. It's okay. It's like when you go to India and, you were saying earlier about Kushinara, you go there and you feel great waves of rapture and tears come. When the Mahayana Buddhists go, they have a different spot. So they maybe get tears and flowing in a slightly different spot because that's their spot. Or you go up Kitchagutta mountain and the Mahayana Buddhists have their spot on the left and the Theravadins have their spot on the right. This is life. There's always a few minor discrepancies whenever we're talking about conventional truth, conventional reality. In one country, they drive on the left. In one another country, they drive on the right. Yeah, there's so many of these little things, but the important thing is not to make a problem out of it. Just try to see the good in it, and maybe you can make use of many different conventions as long as you're not attaching so much that you end up fighting over them, arguing over them. Then you've lost the point of it all.
That's very wise, Longpo. It just means that we have an extended period to accumulate merit and to practice. Right?
Yep.
So there is a question here from Ray Fang. Her question is pretty simple, which is, how should a lay person practice on Magha Puja Day towards the Sangha? Should we visit the temples? What advice would you give, Longpo?
Well, I would, if you have a temple or a place where there are Sangha living near you and it's convenient. I know at this time of COVID, it's not always convenient, but if it is convenient, you have the time, the opportunity, why not? It's one of those days that it's a full moon day. It's a day where you go and you tend to reinforce your faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. If it's an Ajahn Chah monastery, and many other monasteries, of course, you may get a Dhamma teaching. You're reinforcing your faith in the Sangha. You're making offerings to the Sangha. Maybe offer flowers to a Buddhist shrine. All these kind of practices, when repeated regularly, and so, sometimes these important days, they come up every year, so you might repeat them regularly. They become a powerful conditioning force in your life. And, it's one day, one reason to go to the temple, one reason to practice a bit more, listen to Dhamma. In Thailand, and sometimes here, we do all-night sitting sometimes on Magha Puja, maybe not because of COVID now, but traditionally on important days, we sometimes do a meditation all night long. So why not? If you've got any kind of I would say any excuse to practice the Dhamma, well, why not? Do more. If you can go and listen to Dhamma, meditate. Why not? Because one of the biggest problems is we always have excuses why we shouldn't go. I'm too busy. We have lots of excuses why we shouldn't go to the temple, why we shouldn't meditate, well, we haven't got time for this, haven't got time for that. If we're abandoning the unwholesome and cultivating the wholesome, sometimes we have to cut through the kilesas excuses and use the Dhamma excuse and win out by saying, oh, I should go to the temple because it's Marga Puja. Why not? Let's go. And use it as a way to bring up more energy in the practice.
Thank you, Sadhu Lampok. So the next question. This question is from Mac from Australia. The question is with regards to a statement in Luang Pu Man's biography. It is mentioned that a number of Buddhas from the past, accompanied by the Arahant disciples, they came to visit Luang Pu Man. So Mac would like you, Lampok Kalyano, to please share your understanding regarding this statement.
Well, I'm not Luang Pu Man, so I can't really talk with confidence because I wasn't there. I'm not Luang Pu Man. But I do trust in the wisdom of Luang Pu Man as far as I know and as far as I've seen through his teachings, heard through his teachings, and through his disciples, his enlightened disciples, such as Ajahn Mahabur and many, many others that I've lived and practiced with, known. I have a certain confidence or trust that if he said something like that, it wasn't coming from a state of delusion, confusion, attachment, or wrong view. But exactly what happened, then I hesitate to make pronouncements because, people will quote me and say I got it right or got it wrong. These are things you really have to learn through your own experience, through the practice. But certainly he's not alone. There are other monks I know who've had somewhat similar experiences. But exactly what you would say happens, we all know the Buddha dies, enters parinibbana. That's it. There's no more Buddha, no more birth. So how can the Buddha return? That's the key question, isn't it? What is it that they experience? So I would say one thing is probably it's a sign that Luang Pu Man was an enlightened monk. He'd attained Nibbana. One thing the Buddha did say about Nibbana is that there's no limit to the number of beings who can attain Nibbana. It's not like some kind of secret club or limited to just a few individuals. It's open to everyone if they practice, cultivate the Eightfold Noble Path, realize the fruits. So if somebody does attain Nibbana, who knows what actually happens to the citta then? We have the descriptions from the sutras, and most of those are worded in the negative way. We say there's no more birth, no more attachment, no more suffering. It's the uncreated, the unborn. But what exactly they experience, hard to say until you've reached it for yourself. That's the only real sure answer to this question is you have to attain Nibbana, then you'll know. But as I said, other monks have described some similar experiences of being visited by the Buddha, say, and exactly what is going on there. I would just keep an open mind. Don't reject it, don't accept it. Just say, okay, I'm going to put that on one side until my practice is developed a bit further. Because another thing I tend to notice is that those people who have had some good insight and realization in their practice tend not to have a lot of these doubts. So maybe there's still more work you have to do in your practice and get to that point where you have more of a glimpse of Nibbana or the end of suffering, and then it might all make a little bit more sense to you. In a way, it's a bit like the 2 lunar full moon days. you know, how can it be? There's only one time when the moon is full. How can you have 2 days? Well, conventional reality is a bit like that. So if Luang Por Man is describing an experience he's had, he can only use words, the convention of words. And we all know conventional words and conventional language isn't enough to describe Nibbana and some of the experiences of enlightened beings. It's just not enough, because otherwise it wouldn't be Nibbana, would it? Nibbana is beyond the conventional reality. It's what we call paramatta satya. It's ultimate reality. It's beyond words, which is why the Buddha tended to say what it's not rather than what it is, because words can't describe. So many monks seem to feel okay, they've practiced enough to the point where they can accept the possibility that Luang Por Man was visited by a Buddha or Arahants. But at the same time, they can't really explain what it is. So the only real answer is practice until you have your own experience. Because it has to be a personal experience, doesn't it? When you go beyond conventional reality, ultimate reality is a very personal thing. We say, Pachatang veditabo vinyuhi, the wise know for themselves. You can only really witness the truth and realize truth, say Arya Satya Dhamma, for yourself. We can talk about it, we can describe it, but the words, the talks never quite convey the real truth, do they? They're only pointing to the truth, but they're not the truth. And so even the words of Ajahn Mun are going to fall into that category. You know, we just accept them. They may be true, maybe not. We don't know yet. Keep practicing and then you'll find out for yourself.
Anyone wants to ask a question, please click on the raise hand button and I'll invite you to unmute. And would you like to ask your question directly? Okay. And could you please unmute yourself and maybe ask your question directly? This person kept silent, Luang Por. Unable to unmute? Unable to unmute. Pamuja, you want to ask a question? Yes, please unmute yourself.
Will you be safe, well, and happy, Ajahn? Can Ajahn ask you, how does one know that we are in different jhanas?
Is that it? Whether you know whether it's first, second, third, fourth jhana?
Yes, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Well, we have the textbook descriptions. You know, the first jhana has the factors, vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekakata. In terms of experience, it's the depth of equanimity. You know, fourth jhana is as perfect equanimity as you can get, really, as far as samadhi goes. So read the textbook descriptions, familiarize yourself with them. But more importantly, you know, do your practice and just watch and observe and keep an open mind. Don't be too rushed to judge or to label your experience, because Ajahn Chah and many other teachers always remind us we have this tendency as human beings, again, to get caught up in the conventional reality, the labels, the language, the concepts. And because we have desire, we're putting a lot of effort into our practice, we have desire for success, results. You know, the tendency is always to want to label any experience we have immediately. You know, is this first jhana? Is this second jhana? Was there this? Was there that? And you're looking at the factors and how peaceful you were and how long you were in that state. And of course, all that thinking is not jhana at all. That's just doubting and analysis of your experience. So as soon as you're thinking like that, you're not in jhana, you've come out of your jhana, or maybe you weren't even in jhana in the first place. It becomes an obstacle, becomes a real obstacle in your practice. This way of thinking and analyzing or judging your experience. So just be a little bit careful of that. Ajahn Chah encouraged just maybe just to use more just the basic observation. Am I peaceful or not? Are the hindrances, the 5 hindrances, present or not? So literally ask yourself that question. If you're meditating and you're wondering, where am I at in my practice right now? Well, observe, are there any hindrances present or not? If there are, it's definitely not any jhana. If the hindrances seem to have abated and your mind has merged and become very peaceful and centered on its object, okay, just observe and watch and try and maintain the mindfulness at that point. One of the biggest hindrances at that point that re-emerges is doubt. You know, is this jhana? Is this samadhi? What do I do next? Kind of thing. Try to settle those kind of doubts and continue with your practice of mindfulness on the object and on the mind itself. If you've let go of the feelings of the body and the mind is very centered within itself, well, just continue with that. And if you can sit for longer periods, well, why not? Just sit as long as you can with as one-pointed state, peaceful state of mind as you can. And then contemplate, you know, charge up your mind, charge the battery of the mind, and then use it to contemplate the Dhamma. So even contemplate the very desire to know, is this jhana or not? Where's that coming from? Is that coming from wisdom, or is it just coming from doubt, uncertainty, or is it a kind of self-view, self-conceit, you know, wanting to have some result by saying, I have attained first, second, third, fourth jhana? These are so common, these experiences, that, you know, you really need to be prepared and look for them. Contemplate, so contemplate the thoughts that are coming up. If you've been in a state of samadhi and you start to contemplate, you tend to start observing what arises as we say, withdrawing, coming back from that state of samadhi. So the thoughts, the feelings, the memories that pop into the mind, observe them, contemplate them. Are they permanent? Are they not? Are they a self, or are they just mental states coming up out of the conditioning process? The body, contemplate the body. These feelings of pleasure or pain may re-emerge. If you've come out of a state of deep samadhi, you'll start to feel some pain or tiredness. Contemplate that. Contemplate the relationship between the mind and the feeling and the view of self. Maybe you start to feel, oh, I've got pain in my legs. But hold on, legs are not really self. Painful feelings are not self. You have to ask those questions, investigate. And if you have attained some strong samadhi, that will help you to just observe and look more clearly. Your mind becomes brighter, clearer, so you can really see. There's a possibility of seeing body, feelings, mind objects as not self, as impermanent, as not self. So you may never even have to answer the question, was that jhana or fourth jhana or first jhana? You may never even have to answer that question or ask that question. What you may be asking is there self there? Is there suffering there? Is this permanent or impermanent? I would recommend that's the way to proceed. And if you get really skilled in samadhi, well, maybe you have some idea of the kind of jhana or samadhi you've attained. I don't think it's that important, to be honest. I think more important is training in wisdom and contemplation of your experience, to see it as impermanent and not self. That's the way to enlightenment. That's what I'd recommend.
Anyone with further questions? And I'd like to invite you to unmute yourself, but I need you to be in front of the camera so that I can see you. And can you come in front of the camera? Yeah, that's good. Good, good. Then I can see you. Right. Could you unmute yourself? Yeah, press the button, the microphone button, and unmute yourself. M. Yeah. Press the microphone. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead and ask your question, M.
I've been very troubled by this vaccination program thing because my family and friends, most of them have this, they will have this belief that just go ahead, go do it. If you have any adverse effects, injuries or death, just accept it, because as Buddhists, then is maybe it's a good time to leave the world, go nirvana, leave this world, and then just accept it. So otherwise, other time you don't have to focus so much on this. You can have more time for your meditation, chanting, reading, or even attending Dhamma classes. But my take is that if it's we have to find out the truth, then if it's people who we do not know, but we come across, we know that these strangers have been affected by the, and then we kindly warn our family and friends. Maybe the adverse effects may happen to them. If they feel their heart pain, chest pain is because of that, they say it's okay, they just see doctor, take medicine, for no reason they suddenly have heart medicine, and then they take it, they accept it, and then they say we shouldn't dwell so much on this, argue so much, and then just this is life, we have to accept it. And then but I personally, I don't take it, I don't buy it, because I don't want anything unfortunate to happen to ourselves, our body, our family, our young children, even our elderly parents. They have taken it, and we really is hoping that first, second, third dose, nothing happens. So far so good, we cross fingers and everything. But if I still have any worries about it, people will ask you, do you believe? So they say, ask your Sifu, ask your Venerable, and then what advice they'll tell you. But I have so far approached one Sifu, and then now I'm asking Ajahn, so for your advice, if anything we take, anything we happen to ourselves, should we just accept this? And what will happen to the innocent and young children? Now children under 5 may be taking it. So, and we can't go anywhere, any temple, any volunteer work which requires the vaccination status. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, I sympathize with you. Obviously, it's been a big cause of doubt, suffering for many people. I can only speak for myself. I've had 3 jabs now. Luang Por Anand's had 3 jabs. Luang Por Parts has his jabs. So there are many monks who have had the jabs and survived and carried on as normal. I'm somebody who's really susceptible to cold and flu. And when I had my jabs, I did get ill for a day or 2, but I got better, just like I have with other bouts of cold and flu. So generally speaking, if they're mandating it, and that's another problem, it becomes compulsory, like you say, for work, for voluntary work, for doing this, doing that. Generally speaking, it seems to be okay to take the jab, but if you choose not to, fine. I mean, that's your choice. In terms of karma, well, if you're not going to die from getting your 2nd or 3rd jab, well, you may die from a car accident. You're more likely to die from a car accident than from the COVID jab, I believe. there's so many ways we can have a sudden death in this world. Use that to your advantage. Like we, as Buddhists, we do reflect on the impermanence of life, the possibility of death, and that helps us to bring a certain immediacy or urgency to our practice. But at the same time, you don't want to be paralyzed by fear of death, whether it's getting into a car, on a plane, or taking a COVID jab. So if you go by statistics, I think generally they say statistically there's not very much risk. There's some small risk, of course, but not so much. Whereas if you don't take your jab, there seems to be more risk. In Australia, that's what they're telling us. I don't know if it's true, of course, but generally they say people who don't get the vaccination there've been more cases where they have serious illness, death amongst the unvaccinated. So, like you say, I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. If it's your time to die, you may die from some other cause, like the guy in Bangkok who was scared of COVID and said, I'm leaving Bangkok to get away from COVID. And he went home and he was bitten by a poisonous snake on the first day and died of that. There's so many ways you can die in the world. COVID is only just one of them. I don't want to depress you, but it's just a fact of life. Our life is fragile. So I wouldn't dwell too much on it. If you decide to get a vaccination, fine. If you don't, fine. With loved ones, yeah. With children, I really don't know what I would do because I haven't had children, and I don't know what the statistics are and what the risk factor is with children at the moment. If you're in doubt, well, maybe wait and see if you can, if they'll allow you to wait and see how it's going. And one thing is that, vaccines, they want to sell them, so they're not going to sell them if they're killing everyone. So they'll always be trying to improve those vaccines so they can make more money. So that's in our favor in a sense that, they'll generally try to make safe, reliable vaccines over time. When I was a kid, I got lots of vaccines I can remember for different things, and none of them caused me any trouble. So that was maybe one factor in my decision. I've had vaccines before for different things. So a new vaccine, okay, I'll just try it. And it was okay so far. So just see whether it fits in with your practice or not, and try not to make a problem out of it in your mind. Once you've made your decision, just go with it and carry on practicing. No point getting a vaccine and then still being a very angry, unpleasant person to the people around you, or a very greedy person, always stealing and taking things from other people. That's as important as well. Do you keep the precepts or not? So if you take the vaccine, try to keep the 5 precepts, try to practice mindfulness, try to practice compassion and wisdom. Or if you don't take the vaccine, still try to keep the 5 precepts, practice compassion, mindfulness, wisdom. In the end, the practice is the important thing, isn't it? More than the vaccine. The way to heaven, the way to Nibbana is through the Eightfold Noble Path. So whether you take the vaccine or not, it's the Eightfold Noble Path is what you should be developing.
Sadhu, Luang Por.